Hello, my name is Kyley Skaggs, and for my book report, I have read How Will You Measure Your Life by Clayton Christensen. Please excuse me, I'm very congested, and my new daughter is also experiencing a very severe cold, so I'm just going to get right into it. Um, the book, How Will You Measure Your Life, is divided into three sections. The first is called Finding Happiness in Your Career. The second is called Finding Happiness in Your Relationships. And the third is called Staying Out of Jail. So I'm just going to kind of laze through the book and highlight the areas of importance for this book report. In the first chapter, Christensen explained a disarming experience that he had after graduating from an MBA program. At his first reunion, he found that many of his colleagues seemed to be very successful and had found really great careers, married beautiful wives, and started families. But he explains that as everybody aged and he met up with his colleagues at subsequent reunions, it became clear that many of his colleagues that had appeared to be successful are actually very unhappy. Marriages had fallen apart, his colleagues had become estranged from their children, and one of his colleagues had even gotten tangled up in a high-profile fraud case. So Christensen discusses the need for each of us to invest in what truly matters, not to lose sight of the importance of our relationships with our friends and families early on in our careers. According to Christensen, we ought to measure success by how well we align our lives with our values and make a careful investment in the areas that provide lasting fulfillment. One chapter that I found especially striking was called Chapter 3, The Balance of Calculation and Serendipity. Christensen discusses two strategies, the dependent strategy and the emergent strategy. A dependent strategy is a typical strategy where you have a goal in mind and you sort of backwards engineer how you're going to get to that goal. An emergent strategy involves having an open mind and choosing the best opportunities that present themselves in the hope that you find success. Christensen suggests that you should balance the two strategies in life. Businesses must leave space for serendipity and remain open to new strategies and ideas as they endeavor to innovate. In both our professional and personal lives, the balance of the two strategies may help us find happiness. When I started my career, I had a clear goal in mind. I wanted to work for a CPA firm until I earned my CPA license and became a senior auditor, and then I would find a job as a senior accountant with one of my clients. Well, I pushed and I pushed and I pushed to succeed with that strategy, even when it became clear that CPA firm life was no life for me, and that culture and those demands of those jobs were proving devastating to my mental health. And I'm glad for the experience because I got my CPA license, and having that license has opened a lot of doors, and I have, eventually found a job that I do love. But it's a great example of being married to a dependent strategy. In my personal life, I've adopted more of an emergent strategy. I've surpassed some major milestones like getting married and having children when I personally felt ready, regardless of not owning a home. And now I'm not sure if I'll ever be a homeowner, but I'm focusing on growing my savings and balancing my desire for stability with my desire to travel and make the most of my kids' childhood. So I agree that happiness comes from having both a dependent and emergent strategy at play. Chapter 5. Christensen urges us to avoid becoming complacent with our spouses and families. He insists that our kids and spouses require continuous investments of our time and energy. And just as in business, when it seems like you're safe and no further investments are required, you absolutely need to stay on course. Christensen equates this to businesses who invest in growth products knowing that the profitability of their mature products will one day stall. When life becomes busy or difficult, we hope that our relationships will be strong enough to endure neglect. This will only be the case if we have made sufficient investments in advance. I appreciated Christensen's musings about the film It's a Wonderful Life because that is a favorite of mine as well. Chapter 6 is called What Did You Hire That Milkshake For? What job did you hire that milkshake for? Christensen explains this anecdote about how the same milkshake hired to do two different jobs may not do either one well. One customer may want a large, thick milkshake to drink on the morning commute, while another might just want a small treat for their child. So it's important to be intentional about the jobs you hire your spouse to do and what your spouse is hiring you to do. Christensen shared his own vision of his fatherhood and explained that he'd been deliberate in his interactions with his children based on his desire to be a nurturing father. In Chapter 9, Christensen defines culture as the way individuals behave automatically in order to be successful, and he stresses the importance of deliberately developing culture within our families. Within businesses, companies establish culture as a result of shared experiences. Culture develops in response to external and internal challenges as management decides what to prioritize in order for the team to be successful. Managers need to be very careful when deciding what matters and must establish a culture where ethics are considered and valued. Managers will develop a tone from the top and must show employees that ethical considerations are important. When I was reading this section on culture, we were covering the Pinto case in our class, and this is an excellent example of a business failure as a result of unethical culture from the top down. Christensen would have approached the situation by encouraging Ford to do the right thing and make the needed recalls and repairs to the vehicles. He would have also urged the company to establish a culture of ethics that wouldn't think twice about saving lives. Christensen's discussion of his own intentional family culture was really provocative. I never considered that I need to be intentional about developing my own family culture beyond us all just being our best and being kind and supportive of each other. And this led me to consider things that were missing from my own family culture when I was a child and how I want to be more deliberate in instilling those things in my own family. A great example of this is health consciousness. My parents never prepared healthful food or set an example by exercising, and as a result, I've struggled to find my way through adulthood toward being more health conscious. So I want to support my values with action and intentionally set a better example for my kids to develop that culture of health consciousness in my family. In section 3, staying out of jail, Christensen begins with a quote by C.S. Lewis. The safest road to hell is the gradual one, the gentle slope, soft underfoot, without sudden turnings, without milestones, without signposts. Living a life of integrity is our best protection against corruption. Just as we learned early on in this course, Christensen explained that rather than being large and obvious, ethical dilemmas may stem from low-stakes decisions, and without our antenna up, we may not realize that we're on the road to ruin. Christensen calls this a similar idea. It's called the trap of marginal thinking. According to Christensen, life is just one big string of extenuating circumstances, and we cannot compromise our values just once, because then nothing will stop us from compromising our values again and again. At the end of our lives, we will want to look back on our decisions and know that we did our best to act with integrity and not have regret over not holding true to our values. And in the ethical toolkit, Christensen is clearly most aligned with virtue ethics. That pretty much wraps up my book report. I really appreciated this assignment and having the encouragement to explore this book and apply it to my own life.